Hello everyone, my name is Scott Lau and I'm here to give you a tutorial today on how to create a multi-transport manager within your Disguise project. This little video is best used in concert with the slide deck that I've put together that also teaches the specifics of how to create a multi-transport manager within Disguise. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and taken the liberty of creating a stage and project template already for this example. We've got a 3-screen project with a center LED wall that's going to be widescreen, and we have 2 outboard screens that are going to be 16 by 9 that are going to complement our main screen. And as you can see down here below, I've got 3 different looks of backgrounds just to kind of break things up and show you a few different looks. So in order to create our multi-transport manager, the first thing we're going to need to do is to create transport managers for every track that we want to use in this project. To do that, we're going to go up to the top of the screen and left click where it says transport. That's going to prompt us to create a new transport manager. For this mock corporate show that we're going to do here, we're going to create a transport manager for the IMAG track, which is going to cover your camera switch. We're going to create a transport for our playback, which is going to cover all video playback. We're also going to create a transport for PowerPoint, which is going to cover all slide decks and whatnot. So let's start by creating our IMAG transport. And so where it says new transport manager, we're just going to name it IMAG. And then it's going to prompt you with another window that asks you what type of transport manager do you want to create. For now, we're just going to create a regular transport manager. We'll get to the multi-transport shortly. Now, once you left click and create your IMAG transport, you can see this new window that gives you a variety of options that you can edit, some parameters you can change. For now, we're going to focus on where it says set list. You'll see that it automatically shows you a set list that says automatic. That's the default set list. And if you leave it on automatic, that's going to cover every track that you create within your project. Now, for the sake of this example, and for what I've seen in most scenarios in the real world, we're going to create a set list that limits each transport to the track that we want it to control. So let's create a set list here, and we're going to left click on that and then create a new set list, and we're going to call this IMAG set list. You're going to hit OK, and then it's going to ask you for what tracks to add. Well, right now we only have track 1. So you can go ahead right here and create your IMAG track. Hit OK. And there you have your IMAG set list is set to just the IMAG track. That's what we want to do for each and every one of the tracks that we're creating. We want to create a transport for each one. So let's go ahead and do that. We've created our IMAG transport, and let's just repeat this process for our PowerPoint transport. Again, that's going to be just a regular transport manager. We're going to create a set list for this, and we're going to call this the PowerPoint set list. And for the PowerPoint set list, we're going to add and create a PowerPoint track. All right. And one last time, let's create one more transport. This is going to be our playback. And we're going to make this a transport manager. And again, we're going to create a playback set list, which is only going to contain our playback track, which we're going to create right now. Okay, so now we've created 3 different new transports to complement the default transport that already existed here. If you left click on the transport tab, you'll see we've got a default transport manager, IMAG, playback, and PowerPoint. Now it's time to create our multi-transport manager. So to create your multi-transport manager, we're going to do the same thing we just did. We're going to go up to the transport tab and left click. And this time where it says new transport manager, we're going to name it the multi-transport manager. And I'm sorry that this is so wordy, but I think this is just the most clear and concise way to teach this without getting confused. You can name these transports or tracks whatever you see fit, but a lot of times, keeping it simple is what works best and helps to avoid any confusion. Now, when you hit enter there, it's going to again prompt you for what type of transport manager that you're like to create. And here we're going to select multi-transport manager. Okay. So now that we've created our multi-transport manager, we go to the window here and we are ready to configure it. Under Configure, you'll see where it has a list of transport managers, and it gives us the option of adding or removing any that we want to. So for now, let's add the 3 transports that we just created, our IMAG, our PowerPoint, and our playback transports. And you'll see them kind of fill in nicely there. One important thing to note is that the order in which you stack your transports is essential to how your show is going to flow. The transports work in much the same way as the top-bottom hierarchy that you might see in your timeline. And so for this corporate event, or this simulated event, we're going to have the default transport, which is our backgrounds, live on the bottom. We're going to have IMAG live on top of that. We're going to have PowerPoint live on top of that. And on the very top, we're going to have our video playback. One thing you're going to want to make sure of is that under control, you'll see that you have the transports and tracks listed. You want to make sure that these are matching up to the transports and tracks that you want. So for example, track 1, we want this set list to be the IMAG set list. PowerPoint, we want it to be the PowerPoint set list. And then playback, we want it to be the playback set list. And as you'll see, if you try to change tracks now on your right-hand side, nothing's going to happen because we have created looks like the default track 1, we have not created a set list. So let's do that really quickly. This is still set to automatic. So we have to create one for this bottom layer, and we'll call this the track 1 set list, which we know to be the backgrounds. And the only track that's going to contain is track 1. So now we try to move around. Nothing's moving. Every transport and track are locked together, which is exactly what we want. All right, so fantastic. We've created our multi-transport manager. We've created our 4 transports that are contained within it. Everything's locked together. What now? It's important not only to know how to create a multi-transport, but it's also important to know how best to utilize it. So for the end of this tutorial, I just want to go over some of the ways that I would use this in the real world, and it really just comes down to creating cues for each one of our tracks. So as you can see, we have started with a background track, our track 1, and we've got a nature look, we've got a night look, and something that I called lookout. Now, if you right-click on the timeline at the start of each section, it gives us an option to create a cue and create a note. I believe when you normally open this up, it's stuck on timecode, but we want to create this to be a cue, and we're going to give it a tag of 1.0.0, and we're going to call this one nature. I like to go about and leave notes for each one of my cues, just so it's really clear as to what the desired look we're trying to achieve when you hit that cue. In case you have to step away or you're not available to be sitting at your position, this will allow somebody else to sit down and also have a pretty good idea of where we're going. So for the second cue, I'm going to number this one as 1.1.0.1. This one we called night. And last but not least, we'll do the last one, which is going to be 1.0.2, and we'll call this one lookout. I have not programmed any content for my other tracks yet, but I have uploaded some, I've added some assets to the video file. So really quickly, let's go to our IMAG track, which is going to be blank right now. Let's go ahead and create a IMAG layer. And we'll hit Alt-S and create a small section for this. And normally you would use probably your video input for this IMAG look, but for now we're going to put this just on our outboards, and we're going to use a little asset that I created, which just is an IMAG look there. And what we're going to do now is create cues for our IMAG track. So we'll start here. We'll create a cue at the beginning where we have nothing, and what we're going to call this is cue 2.0.0, and what we're going to leave a note is clear IMAG. This is a cue that allows us to clear IMAG once it's on screen. The next cue is going to be our IMAG cue. We're going to label that 2.0.1, and we'll call this IMAG. Okay. Now we're going to repeat this process pretty similarly mapped for the PowerPoint track. So our PowerPoint track, we're going to create a cue right at the start. We're going to call this one 3.0.1, and we'll leave a note calling it clear PowerPoint. And we're going to create another layer here, PowerPoint layer, And again, how I'm mapping these in terms of what assets, this is more so for an example, but with a PowerPoint, it might be a live input from somewhere else. For now, we'll just do our PowerPoint presentation, AI in the metaverse. And we're going to label this queue 3.0.2 and PowerPoint. Okay. And thus far, I have iMag and PowerPoint both just mapped to the same outboard screens, just a simple direct mapping. Now, last but not least, we'll go to video playback. And yes, you guessed it, we're going to create this first queue, 4.0.0. Well, this one will be clear video. And then let's create another video layer. Whoops. And I created a feed map for this one, so we'll have the center feed for this video, and for this video we'll use some of the D3 media that we're familiar with. Let's use the test street video. Okay, and we'll just fit this to contents. Apologize for the screaming baby behind me. And we're also going to copy this video layer and add that mapping to our outboard screen. So same thing as before, left and right. Okay, and let's label this queue 4.0.1. All right, so now we have created queues for each one of our tracks and each one of our looks. So now we can easily control and manage our entire show using the MultiTransport Manager. So if we hit play, we can see that our video playback is playing on top of our outboards as well as our center feed map. We can clear that. That's going to reveal below your PowerPoint presentation on the outboards. And while we're doing that, we can bounce around to different backgrounds without affecting anything going on top. If we want to clear our PowerPoint, it's going to reveal the iMag shot that we have up there, and we could change backgrounds beneath that. Everything is working in concert without affecting any of the other programming. Now, granted, this is a simple example and a simple test, but this can really be expanded upon, and you can create really complicated shows and manage them quite efficiently using the MultiTransport Manager. One last thing I wanted to touch upon is that because we programmed queues into each one of our looks, we can press Control-G and bring up our queue list. And this allows you to also bounce back and forth between various queues and kind of switch your show that way. So if you want to clear iMag, you just hit the clear button right there. If you want to go to PowerPoint, go PowerPoint, change the backgrounds. You can do that very simply using the queue list. Most commonly, however, you probably will use an external programming panel to do most of your show calling and live show execution. That's done over here in the Event Transport tab, and that is something that we can go over on a future lesson. I'm more than happy to answer any of those questions after this tutorial, and you can also reach out to either myself or anyone at Disguise for help. So thank you so much for attending today's tutorial. I hope that this video is helpful alongside the slide deck that I prepared for the MultiTransport Manager. Have a great day.